we have the presentation about participatory monitoring of biodiversity loss in Colombia.
Yeah, thank you, Andreas, and thank you for coming and joining the public lecture this afternoon on Gründonnerstag. I know a lot of people from ZEFa also on holidays, also from our partners in Colombia, Easter time, and we all deserve it. But anyhow, I'm happy, or we are happy, Carolina and I, to present kind of preliminary results of a project that we conducted throughout the last 2 years on participatory monitoring of biodiversity loss in Colombia, to look after alternatives for understanding and resolving environmental conflicts. Abbreviation is ColPaMon. Yeah, we worked on this project, or we departed from our Doctoral Studies Support Program financed by the German Academic Exchange Service. And yeah, we gained some seed funds of the Ministry for Education and Research, BMBF, and managed to work together with one of our partners, also a bilateral graduate school, the Freie Universität of Berlin, the project or the program which is called trAndeS, and they work together with Peru. So somehow we developed this project jointly, and then yeah, tried to do our very best during the pandemic to yeah, realize workshops that we had promised in our initial project proposal. Yeah, next, Carolina.
Something is not working now.
It's not working?
No, but let's see what, yeah.
Yeah, what we are going to do today, well, I will kind of introducing the project and yeah, set the scene, describing the context of Colombia. Some of you might not be familiar. Then we want to look into the Doctoral Studies Support Program, even though, of course, this is a huge program with a lot of different activities and other projects as well. And of course, we just can briefly look at it. Then I pass on to Carolina, and she will introduce the ColPaMon project, different activities, preliminary results will be described. And then, of course, we would like to discuss with you future initiatives that are in the making somehow, and work in progress, of course, and also open debates. And yeah, the idea is really to develop a larger research project that can be then at the end of the story be conducted together with our bilateral partner in Colombia, the Universidad Nacional. Yeah, thank you. Okay. So setting the scene, you might know that, and of course, Colombia is not a singular case, but a case in point, of course, for environmental conflicts that have increased since the 1990s due to different reasons. You might have heard that in 2016, the peace accord has been signed by different conflicting partners. And even though this has been a very important step towards more yeah, peaceful collaboration and also modes of finding solutions for these environmental conflicts and the crisis that is definitely can definitely be observed at the Colombian case. Yeah, these environmental conflicts did not disappear. On the contrary, they even increased after this peace accord. So main reasons are, of course, different interests on the natural resources by mining activities. For example, coal is being extracted, but also gold, infrastructural measures and extension of dams and roads and so on. Also, the expansion of monocultures, for example, the Palma africana was introduced to Latin America and also to Colombia, which is causing a lot of environmental problems, or sugarcane, for example, a rather traditional cash crop that is also being cultivated in Colombia. And of course, also the intensive use of agrochemicals within these monocultural activities is leading to a lot of health issues and loss of livelihoods, and population is being displaced, and so on and so on. Next, please. Yeah, here we can see on a map where the most environmental conflicts take place or are most common, as you can see here from the map, in the Andean region, but also in the Pacific region. And you can see, for example, these orange dots show where mining is quite active. And of course, mining is causing, as mentioned before, a lot of conflicts in Colombia. The black dots describe the extraction of mineral fuels, or where mineral fuels are being extracted. And in blue, for example, water issues connected also to mining and to agricultural practices, intensive agriculture, where water is being polluted and where conflicts around water are at place. Of course, all these conflicts and all these activities, and let's put it like this, these are activities that can be described as development initiatives, targeting towards economic growth and the extraction of natural resources, of course, but all these conflicts trigger, of course, also biodiversity loss. Next, please. Yeah, the effects of these development efforts, I mentioned it before, are the destruction of natural resources, but also the livelihoods of rural population mainly, and the displacement of, for example, Afro-Colombians, which mainly live in the Pacific, but also in the Caribbean regions of Colombia, but also indigenous people, of course, living in rural areas in the Andean region. And we need to mention that here the kidnapping and murder of environmental so-called activists and community leaders is really an issue, and is weakening the communities in their efforts to defend their territories. Next, please. There are certain claims that these affected populations come up with, and of course they want, or they claim, more participation of the local population and civil society actors in decision-making when it comes to these development initiatives. They are in many cases formulated and articulated in a direct democratic protests. So social movements are quite active and currently very much active in also trying to make a change in the national administration and the national government of Colombia. There's also a claim of increasing the consultas populares. These are mechanisms of citizen participation that serve to exercise the constitutional right to vote on issues of national importance. And of course, they can and they have influenced debates and decision-making processes at state or governmental level. Another claim, maybe a third claim, is also to engage in joint knowledge production. That means not leave knowledge that is being produced to academia and state bodies, but knowledge that is also being produced at local levels on the causes and on the effects of these environmental conflicts to communities and those parts of the population that is affected by these conflicts. And one of these forms of producing knowledge jointly are ways of monitoring these conflicts in a participatory way. Next, please. Now I switch to our Doctoral Studies Support Program and the second phase. I really don't want to go too much in depth here, but maybe to mention just quickly that we have 5 objectives now in the second phase that started in January 2020 after a 3 years first phase, at least with our program in Colombia. Well, just to mention quickly, we want to introduce interdisciplinary and critical reflective development studies, of course, by teaching critical reflective development studies to jointly with our partners, to doctoral students and master students. We develop a research agenda that should address the SDGs, here selected at the right-hand side. We want to internationalize science and research with transatlantic partnership. This is quite exciting because we engage in quite close cooperation with other DAAD financed projects, for example, in Ghana and in West Africa. We explore and critically reflect the role of higher education for the SDG, and we assume that knowledge production needs to be embedded, contextualized and historicized. And last but not least, we added a 5th objective to the second phase, which is the consolidation and extension of information and data management, within which this 5th objective, the ColPaMon project, is also embedded. And next, please. Yeah, here on the map you can see, even though we need to update that, but you can see that we do not just operate around Bogotá, but we also try to include and invite other university sedes of the national universities, branches of the national university into our activities, and also invite doctoral and master students from these different branches to join our joint research and capacity building efforts, just to zoom into the locations the locations where all these environmental conflicts that we want to study really take place. This is for us really an important also objective, hidden or cross-cutting objective of the entire DSSP program. Next, please. Yeah. To look into this 5th objective, based on the ZEF data management portal, which you probably all know, we also developed within the DSSP a geoportal, a research data portal, which is, and thank you, Carolina, for showing, is immediately connected to the Observatory for Environmental Conflicts, which is the only observatory on conflicts in Colombia, and for that also operated by our research partner, the Institute for Environmental Studies. And of course, we want to support this effort, which is currently on a voluntary basis. So all the doctoral and master students, a lot of doctoral and master students of IDEA work on expanding our knowledge on environmental conflicts and include also local knowledge and information and data into this observatory. So our aim is to develop a geodata portal or a research data management system, which is the Sistema de Información Ambiental de IDEA. We developed it together with our partners, SIAMI, in order to link all the data that is being produced within our project on the one hand, but also that is being stored and managed by other data management systems with the Observatorio de Conflictos Ambientales. And having said that, I think I will pass on to Carolina, and she will now go more in depth to share with you some of the preliminary results and experiences made in the ColPaMon project during the last 2 years. Thanks.
Thank you, Eva. Okay, so I'm going to go, as Eva mentioned. Good afternoon for everyone. I'm going in the context of these 5 objectives that Eva mentioned. Emerge this initiative of participatory monitoring of biodiversity loss in Colombia, that is called ColPaMon, a kind of integration of the Environmental Conflicts Observatory in the SIAMI, that is the Environmental Information System developed by the DSSP. The main objective of this ColPaMon project is to explore alternatives to better understand the roots of the environmental conflicts, but also to give responses and to support local stakeholders. We also know that these local stakeholders are threatened by natural resource loss or degradation caused by conflicts. And we also want to work at the crossroads of science, local knowledge, and activism. So in the context of this, of natural resources, biodiversity, and water, for this project is really important, and for this lecture, for us, it's really important to know, but also to ask you, maybe if some of you want to add a bit, what is monitoring? Or maybe we may be here from different disciplines, so maybe I am not sure if someone want to raise hand or to open microphone and to share a bit. What do you understand by monitoring? I don't know, anyone? Not all, please. Okay, so maybe at the end we can begin the debate, but okay, we can understand. Sorry, okay, please.
It's about following something that is changing.
Okay, thank you, Pablo. Yeah, it's good. It's also from the modern scientific tradition, we can understand the monitoring process as to following up a phenomenon. It's a systematic sampling of data according to defined and determined variables or indicators to follow up a phenomenon. But what is exactly in this case participatory monitoring? How we can make this scientific definition in a participatory way? Maybe someone want to share? Okay. We understand from the project, from ColPaMon project, this participatory monitoring as a form of social participation driven by needs of local information. We also understand another important aspect as the integration of languages, scientific and local knowledge about different dynamics of sociological change. And also the participation of local communities, of course, is completely essential in a participatory monitoring, but in discussions and decisions, not just in the data collecting, but also in decisions that affect their permanence in their territories. Because we are talking here specifically about environmental conflicts And in those conflicts, the local communities are their permanence in the territories has been threatened by this conflict. So in all this context, the first phase of ColPaMon included virtual meetings with different stakeholders, as I mentioned. Yeah, we were in the middle of the pandemics for this process. So we developed virtual meetings with academia, local communities, non-governmental organizations. We also interchanged experiences of monitoring and mapping from Mexico, Bolivia, and Colombia. And we developed 2 workshops, one virtual and one in person, that was carried out last year in Bogotá. So for the first workshop, it was virtual, but we developed conferences, a couple conferences about the environmental conflicts and biodiversity loss in Colombia. But also we have the participation of Marcus Rauhaca from ISOE with a conference about participative mapping of land cover and uses and the relationship with environmental conflicts in one city in Colombia, that's Barranquilla. The working groups that we developed here were oriented with 3 questions. One is the functioning of the monitoring strategies, the minimum conditions for participatory monitoring, and the future alliances that people could foster for these processes. So for the first question, in terms of which forms of communitary and participatory monitoring have functioned and which have not, and in what context, all the groups agree that some of the main aspects for a participatory monitoring works is that the need of participatory mapping, in mapping for located conflicts, but located special sites, also species identification, knowledge dialogue, environmental education, and trying to go for a common language between these, as a result for this dialogue between knowledges. Other important aspect was the do no harm approach, and also the strengthening of social organization. And there is also important aspect that is the monitoring process need to be useful for the local communities. And there is, I think that it's one of the most important things for the sustainability of these processes is the continuity and accompaniment after a monitoring process is done. Some of the elements that make that, or forms that make that participatory monitoring have not functioned is the uncertainty in the data use. Also, what kind of data is collected, in which forms it is collected, for which uses are these data being collected. Also, another important element are the power relationships that reinforces vertical structures. And these power relationships are not just between different stakeholders, but also within local communities, because it's also important to understand which is the social organization, how are the relationships within the communities, if there is some vertical also structure there. Also the low capacities and agency from local communities, and where this is not participative approaches, it's also a bad negative aspect for the participatory monitoring. In terms of the minimum conditions, we can note that all the groups were agree about the open science approach for this kind of participatory monitoring. There is also important, and as a minimum condition, the trust between stakeholders. Also, the security and public risk management is more important in terms of the context of violent conflicts. As we can see in Colombia, environment conflicts are also related with violence and with different armed groups in our territory. So another important condition is the low-cost equipment, because we are in the field working with different local organizations and trying to develop these common languages. So we need also equipment that is also easy for people to use and, of course, to buy. As I mentioned in the previous question, it's important to answer why we are developing monitoring and for whom we are gathering this data. A minimum condition is also the social organization and the relationship of these local communities with entities of control that may control over the different projects, at least in our country, is important issue. In terms of, in terms of forms of articulation, we people say in the working groups that it is important to strengthen the environmental conflicts observatory and trying to make an active platform. This is now the observatory until now has done a really good job, but it's also important to nourish, to go in for more primary information, not just about secondary information, but also with primary data for this, to better understand the roots of the conflicts, as I mentioned in the main objective of the project. It's also important to joint information systematization between different experiences and also reinforce the relationship between organizations and civil society. Also to create more spaces to interchange experience and knowledge, a network, for example, with the specific products and results. And also, again, the security issues are really, really important, not just for the ongoing and current process, but also for the future project. Between the first and second workshop, we developed this virtual interchange of experiences. We know a bit about the community water monitoring and territorial defense in Bolivia, in the Lago Tóbon, by the Center for Communication and Andean Development. We also knew the experience of a peasant laboratory for the transition to agroecology in Colombia, in Sumapaz, to the south of Bogotá city. And this is there was a kind of joint work between different social organizations. One of them is Tierra Libre, and also a collective of teachers and students of National University that is called Enraizando. And the third experience is the communitary use of drones in environmental conflict. This from a Colombian researcher that works right now in Mexico, the UNAL. In the second workshop that it was present in person in Bogotá last year, we developed conference working groups and also a field trip for the south border of Bogotá. And the main objective of this workshop was to expand and complement the comprehension about the environmental monitoring systems. But the most important issue of this workshop was the support of local stakeholders and representatives of civil society. So the expanding of the knowledge and the comprehension about these conflicts was with the support of this representative of not just in general civil society, but for each one of the cases that was working in this workshop. So we have conferences for the Environmental Studies Institute. Also, we have the presence and a couple of conferences from the Leibniz Center for Agricultural Landscape Research here in Berlin, South, and also a couple more conferences about one of Ines Jendrik, the global risk of emerging socio-ecological land use conflicts, and a kind of preparation for the field trip that was this conference about conflicts in the Bogota South border as an approach from the activism, not just academic vision, but an approach from activism. In terms of the working groups, we work with 4 cases. I'm going to explain a bit of these 4 cases in a while, and we were oriented with 4 questions about when does the conflict start, and at what point does participatory monitoring begin, at kind of timeline of the conflicts to understand the emergence of this conflict, the main actors in the conflict, the interest of these actors in the conflict. What are the methodologies or techniques that have been used in the monitoring experience, more in terms of methodological approaches, because all these cases have developed before process of monitoring, and how is the monitoring experience articulate with the process of territorial construction. So we work with these 4 cases. One is this Lipa wetland. This is in the east region of Colombia, so close to the border with Venezuela. The second case was the Galilea forest in Tolima. This is in the center of Colombia. The Tasco municipality. This is related with hydrocarbons, exploitation and exploration. Galilea forest is also related with agrarian reforms. Tasco and Quinchía. Quinchía is in the western part, in the coffee region of Colombia, are more related with mining. This also agree with the map that ZEFa showed before. About here is a lot of gold and coal mining, coal in this region and gold in the western region of the country. So the first day we discuss about the timeline, the stakeholders, interests, methodological approaches. And the second day we discuss about the ideas for continuity and cooperation with the Environmental Conflict Observatory and the ColPaMon project. So for the first day about the knowledge on the conflict and monitoring process, all the 4 cases, the conflicts began in the context of violent conflict in Colombia. It's around the mid-20th century. In Colombia, we used to call the violence period, but unfortunately, we are in the violence period today. All the conflicts are related with extractive activities, hydrocarbons exploration and exploitation, coal and gold mining, also agrarian reforms. And all the 4 conflicts has elements of social resistance and pacific mobilization in different times of the long period conflict. And the 4 cases are developed before monitoring as a need for producing local knowledge. It's a kind also not just need for local knowledge, but also counter evidence of the effects and the impacts of the mega projects with these extractive activities. And the second day, we go we discussed more about ideas for cooperation and continuity with ColPaMon and the observatory. And all people were agree that some demands that were central are visibility and spreading of the conflict. Also, they claim for support for the management of information, not just the data collecting, but also all the system of the chain of management of information, from the collecting, the analysis, protocols, methodologies, but also the use and the decision making with this information and the knowledge production, of course. There's also important the mapping and cartography for the future. Also, not just support in terms of technical support, but also legal support is so important to connect this information production and knowledge production with legal actions that can help them to defend their territories. Also, project management in terms of different topics can also get achieve funding for different local demands also the creation of networks, specific training. Again, the open science approach was a central demand in this last day of discussion, and work into the field, not just research in the academia, but also work, that real work in the field, like the people also kind of. The last day of the workshop was a field trip to Bogota South border. This is an interesting area because it's so close to the main city of Colombia, but also there is an area with high vulnerability rates, high poverty rates, also a lot of conflicts related with the garbage disposition in the city, also with mining, also with different kind of problems there, but also there is all interesting experiences. This is one collective space. It's a school, but it's a rural school that is also works as a collective space to make discussions and to also to make some monitoring process in aqueducts that are being affected by different kind of discharges, liquid discharges of different kind of factories. In this year, we began the second phase of this ColPaMon project. We are trying to make kind of visibility and spreading of the processes. We already have an article in the ZEF News. We also here in the public lecture trying to make reading also with you, and we want also to try to begin a debate with different departments of ZEF to begin to talk about monitoring. We are exploring from the participatory and integrative methodologies, but maybe, of course, with other experiences in other regions, we also can, make a really good joint work. So in this framework, we are beginning to develop a research proposal with some important elements about inter and transdisciplinary work from this open science approach, as I have mentioned before, in the crossroads of science, society, and policy, participative and integrative methodologies in all the phases of the research process, and also the monitoring process with a gender perspective. So in forthcoming, we have this third workshop in June. All ZEF community is invited to join, and we also are working in a kind of working paper as a comprehensive document with some of the results of the first phase of this process. So we want to conclude this lecture not with real conclusions, but also with questions, open questions for you about your ideas or perceptions about monitoring. If you know or have ideas about experiences of monitoring and participatory mapping, and also to ask if you think that there is some benefits, if you see benefits in mapping and monitoring biodiversity loss in a participatory way. So thank you for your attention.